Ho ho ho! It's whiskey time! Greetings, whiskey folk. Welcome back to Drinking Out Loud. My name is Adam Bradshaw, and we are here today to discover the Scotch Malt Whisky Society of Canada's December 2025 Outturn. Outturn number 170 here at the Canadian branch. And what a hell of an outturn it was. First of all, it was the first outturn since the strikes. So we actually had a 2-month break from outturns, unintentional break. So I think members were very much looking forward to getting back at it with the new releases. It was, there's some bloody impressive new releases. So much so that there's really not much of these available anymore. But I do want to give you my thoughts and impressions on them and introduce these whiskies to you. Just so that if you do want to pick one of the last few remaining bottles up, you can. But also, we're not the only store in Canada with these bottles, so it's always nice to give a shout out to our friends and partners over at Keg and Cork, Kensington Wine Market, and Legacy, who will also have some of these bottles and hopefully might have some remaining. If you can't get it at the Strath, maybe you can pick it up there. Truly a wonderful outturn. It's nice to be able to have the time to do a video for one again. I think I've only managed to do 2 outturn videos so far this year. It's been a busy year. So it's nice to get back at it. And we are starting off this final outturn of the year with this one. Big Shed Energy. This one gave off immediate earthy potting shed energy. We all found to varying degrees notes of lanolin, clay, herb butter, chai tea, and pine tree bark. A touch of leather polish was also noted. Reduction brought the sooty and earthier depths right to the fore with dried cupboard spices, ginger and lemon tea, and mineral oils. The palate opened with an elegant herbal quality, backed with brittle waxiness, warming peppery notes, and cooling menthol qualities such as tea tree oil and wintergreen. Water ushered in citronella wax, eucalyptus, bergamot, and a gentle medicinal and herbal infusion. Lots to enjoy in this one, we agreed. Lots to enjoy there was. Always interesting to start off an outturn tasting with some big, bold flavours. This is the spicy and dry category, and actually a note on the categories. If you keep one eye on the UK branch, you've probably seen that there's new flavour categories coming and a slight redesign of the label as well. I'm not quite sure about the redesign yet. One of the things that I've been asking for a long time has finally happened, though. They've actually got the flavor category on the label, not just the color, because unless you don't know that that's spicy and dry unless you know. So it's really nice that they've replaced this text here with the category, and they've put Scotch malt whiskey cider across the top. I just think, I don't know, maybe I'm just looking at it a little bit too designery. It looks a little unbalanced with the text above the gold line on the new labels, but I'm sure I'll get used to it. But anyway, still for now over here in Canada, of course, with the traditional 12 categories, not the new ones. And yeah, spicy and dry is an odd way to start a tasting. We normally start with something a little bit more delicate, but there's not an awful lot of delicate to be found in this tasting. It's a big, full-flavoured, bold lineup today, and this is a great way to start that. I love a bit of big shed energy. Ooh. So this is Distillery 73. It's the 168th bottling we've got from Distillery 73. 214 bottles came out of this cask. It was aged for 13 years. It's from Speyside. It was distilled on the 19th of April 2011 and matured for its entire life in a second fill ex-bourbon barrel, coming out at 55.4 ABV. I love a good second fill ex-bourbon barrel with a nice sort of mid-teens, or, well, I guess mid-teens. It's funny, if 13 feels like it's mid-teens because it's close to the middle of between 10 and 20, but it's actually the first teen, because 12 isn't technically a teen. Or is it? That's a good debate. Hit me up in the comments. Are 11 and 12 teens? Do they count? Or do you only count the teens when you get to 13? Anyway, it's a 13-year-old. Yeah, I enjoy more and more having more distillery character and less wood character in my whiskies, especially with single malts, because I feel like that's more so where the individuality lies. And, you know, as I delve forward and have thousands of different whiskey samples throughout my career, I want them to be different. I want them to not taste the same. And yeah, this certainly doesn't. This has individual characteristic. The shed thing's interesting. I wasn't sure what big shed energy was, and I asked the crowd, and yeah, apparently sheds are more meaningful than I thought. I thought a shed was just a cold, damp place at the bottom of the garden where you store your plant pots. Apparently sheds have a whole cultural phenomenon following. Actually, one person in the tasting actually hand-built at least 5 sheds in the last few years, and has different sheds for different purposes. So I guess big shed energy is a thing. I must admit, I do get the terracotta pot kind of thing. It does remind me somewhat of helping my granddad pot the seedlings in the springtime. But I think the biggest takeaway for me on this whiskey is the minerality of it. It feels not... I mean, like the terracotta pots, I guess, is minerality, but it's not really the pots. Like, I don't actually really get the earthiness. It's the pottery itself, and it feels almost more like roof tiles than it does plant pots, you know? There's a nice saltiness to it as well. It's a really interesting one. Yeah, baking spices, ginger. If I was tasting this completely blind, there'd be a small part in the back of my head thinking, is this like one of those super aged rye whiskies? Like an Alberta Premium 23 kind of thing, like the distiller's batch? Because it has that rye-style baking spice to it, but there's so much more going on. There's so much more complexity due to being a single malt. That is lovely, though. That really is. So this distillery is an interesting one as well. It's I discovered it has an adorable nickname that I did not know until earlier this week. Locals refer to it as the Nip of Bucky Road. The Nip of Bucky Road. It just sounds whimsical, doesn't it? It feels like you should have a poem written about it. And apparently that's because this distillery is located on the road between the town of Keith and a famous popular fishing spot in the area called Bucky Port. And the locals would often stop off for a nip of this whiskey at the distillery on the walk to go fishing. I think that's just lovely. It is a distillery that you find relatively often now as a single malt, although that's not historically the case. I think it was 2014 they launched as a single malt and simultaneously doubled their capacity at the distillery. They went in big. Apparently they were very confident in the launch of their single malt. Yeah, we do see it on occasion over here, even here in Canada. This is Altmore. Yeah. Lovely little 13-year-old Altmore. And like I said, it's really nice to be able to not hide the complexity of this whiskey beneath too much cask influence. And I'm not against first fill barrels by any stretch of the imagination, and some whiskies work really well, but it's nice to be able to peek behind the curtain sometimes and see what's going on beneath the cask. And this is a fantastic example of such. I believe we have one bottle of this left at time of recording, so recording this on Thursday. These bottles go live Friday morning, as will the video. So if you're catching this early on a Friday morning and on a brisk early Friday morning in December 2025, you might be lucky enough to catch the one last bottle, and it's $180.78, which means if you're not already an SMWS member and you happen to have found this video, you can become a member. If you've never been a member before, you can basically have a trial period by purchasing this whiskey. And it sounds strange because you have to be a member to buy a whiskey. But paradoxically, if you've never been a member before, you can become a member by buying a whiskey. The caveat is that whiskey must be over $180. And being that this is, again, $180.78, and being that we round everything after tax to the nearest dollar, that means this is quite literally the cheapest way to enter the SMWS here in Canada. And it's a very, very good way to do so. So if you're thinking about joining the SMWS, or maybe you're thinking about buying a gift for someone this Christmas time, it is, yeah, I've got the hat. I can be Whiskey Santa. Maybe you're thinking about purchasing a bottle for someone. You can gift that membership for them as well. So if you buy this bottle as a gift, you will also be giving the gift of Scotch Malt Whisky Society membership. And when you fill out the form, either in store or on the website, there's a little section for when you're going to be giving the gift, so we don't accidentally let slip what wonderful present you've got in store for your loved ones. All right. Whiskey number 2 today is... What do we got? We're having a knees up on a tugboat. Below deck, musky smells and mucky motor oil were apparently oblivious to the party happening upstairs. With the sea air blowing through our hair, we sliced through the salted caramel topping and thick biscuit base of a splendid lemon cheesecake. With the hot rays now beating down, it was time for some coconut-scented sunscreen before ice cream was served in oyster shells, adorned with fluffy marshmallows, pink wafers, and raspberry sauce. Adding water revealed gooseberry sorbet with honeycomb as the tugboat bobbed around the harbour, with delightful textures of darker side emerged that sprinkled Madeira cake with cocoa powder and added another dollop of vanilla ice cream for good measure. You can never have enough good vanilla ice cream with your Madeira cake. All right. Knees up on a tugboat. I apparently need to mention here in Canada what a knees up is, because a lot of people in the audience didn't know the phrase, and a lot of people thought it was a lot more risque than it is. It's just a party, guys. Don't go there. It's just a party. It's knees up, not ankles up. Knees up is just referring to like dancing. You're having a party. You're having a good time. And we're doing so on a tugboat. What better place for a party than a tugboat? Yeah, this is a fun whiskey. I really enjoyed having an Oily and Coastal in position number 2. It's not common you have one that early in a lineup, because often Oily and Coastal also has a touch of peat. And this one, if it is there, it was hardly there, right? I didn't really find any. Certainly not getting on the nose today. But this is a classic, funky, industrial style Campbellton whiskey. It was, distilled in Campbellton on the 11th of June 2015. It was aged for 9 years. They got 201 bottles out of their first fill ex-bourbon barrel. 57.6% ABV. This is Distillery 93.218. And I know I just went off about how much I love the distillery characteristics that come through with a second fill. However, there are certain distilleries which it feels like you could basically throw them in the most active cask humanly imaginable, and the characteristics are so strong that you'll still come through anyway. This distillery is one of those. You're going to get a lot of those more industrial, oily flavours, and a lot of bright fruit flavors from this distillery, regardless of whether you put it in first fill or refill. It's just with the first fill, you're going to back it up with more sweetness, more vanilla, more caramel, more of that sort of the coconut sunscreen that it mentioned in the tasting notes. Those kind of flavors from that first fill ex-bourbon as well. So you're not just getting the lemon, you're getting the cheesecake. It really does meld quite nicely. Pink wafers in ice cream. I don't think I've ever had a pink wafer in an ice cream. I brought up the pink wafers, or we call them flamingo biscuits back in Yorkshire. The light little rectangular sticks of wafer with a little tiny bit of cream. It's almost like a Kit Kat without the chocolate and bright pink for some reason, and massive. I'd never thought to put one of those in an ice cream, but now someone mentioned it. It feels like the natural thing to do with it. You stick it in the top of a Mr. Whippy. Oh, that's another British term that doesn't translate well over here. Mr. Whippy. The first time I called a soft serve ice cream a Mr. Whippy, my partner Kristen looked at me like I'd gone mad. And frankly, it is a very whimsical name for a soft serve ice cream. But yeah, Mr. Whippy. I want a Mr. Whippy I want to knees up with a Mr. Whippy on a tugboat. How's that? I'm going to give Mr. Whippy a knees up on a tugboat. Oh dear. All right. So you've probably guessed the distillery by now, but just to really hammer it home, this distillery was founded in 1832, and unlike the vast majority of distilleries of that era, it was not founded by farmers. That was the common thing in the early 1800s because farmers were looking for a way to preserve their excess barley yields. However, this was actually created by engineers, boat builders in fact, the Galbraith family, shipbuilders. Some people say that adds to the industrial style. I think that's post-rationalization personally. I don't think just because a distillery was built by a guy that makes boats, it's going to taste like it was made on a boat. But then again, maybe there is some truth to that, because it does taste particularly industrial and coastal. It is a Glen Scotia. Yeah, you're quite right. For those of you thinking that at home. Glen Scotia makes sort of 4 standard styles in-house. They've got long fermentation and slow and short fermentation, which will give you either a more bolder, oily, sort of industrial flavour, or a really light, mellow, fruity flavour. And then they do the same 2 things with peat as well. So there's peated and unpeated, light and dark, essentially. 4 different quadrants of Glen Scotia. This feels solidly in the deep, dark, industrial, unpeated quadrant, which I feel you don't see very often. I feel like a lot of that more industrial style tends to go with the peated malt as well. So this is really nice to be able to get this style. And it's a real contrast with our single cask Glen Scotia official bottling that we have here at the Strath as well, which I'm sure I must have a bottle kicking around over there somewhere. That is very much more on the light, fruity, apricot-y kind of a flavour profile, and this honestly could not be much more different to that. It's very opposite end of the spectrum. That is bloody lovely. Ooh. All right, so this is the one whiskey which did not sell out as dramatically as the others. We did get more of this, so that explains some than most of the other whiskies we got here today. But there is 6 bottles available at time of recording, which frankly is surprising, and it just goes to show how incredible the rest of the lineup is as well. In most lineups, this would be a sellout pretty quickly, this style of Glen Scotia. And it can be yours right now at strathliquor.com/SMWS for the handsome price of $183.39. So again, just over that 180 marker. So if you've got someone who you'd like to gift a bottle for Christmas and give them the gift of SMWS membership at the same time, this is a fantastic, fantastic option for that. All right. Next up is the whiskey that on paper I thought was going to be the weakest of the bunch, but is honestly the most surprising. I thoroughly enjoyed this next whiskey. This is Aeroplane Elevation. Wandering through the mist of perfumes in duty-free, we made a beeline for the candy section before boarding a vintage aeroplane. Tutti-frutti gummies in cardboard boxes, foam bananas, vanilla and lemon bonbons, and spiced cookies. To taste, we found all of the above, plus baked apples with ginger, raspberries atop clotted cream on warm scones, and rhubarb with custard. A splash of water elevated the vanilla on the nose and added melted beeswax and cola candies. The palate was now creamy and sweet with maple sponge and toffees, a dusting of mace, and tropical bonbons. Yeah, a little all over the place, those tasting notes. And yeah, this is such a quintessential Northern Highlands style whiskey in flavour profile. Although I don't believe it's actually located in the Northern Highlands. I forget exactly where the distillery is, but I'm fairly sure it's quite south of in the Highlands region. But this feels very Clynelish-y to me. And it's not a distillery that I'm used to feeling that way about. This feels quite different to the official bottlings I've had from this distillery. It's distillery number 6. Yeah. Yeah, beautiful whiskey. Let's give you the stats. It's the 80th Distillery 6 that we've had at the SMWS, which in like 43 years, that's not that many. Think about it. This was the sixth distillery that the SMWS ever bought a cask from, and in that 43 years, we only had 80 of them. A stark difference to the near 500 we've had from some distilleries. This is Outturn. There's one of 288, so we've got 288 bottles out of a first fill ex-bourbon hogshead. Came out at 59.2. It was distilled on the 13th of February 2015 in the Highlands region for 9 years. It was aged 9 years in that ex-bourbon cask. I feel like every time I read the label, I do it in a different order. I'll just keep going and I'll pick a random order to display the information verbally. All right, so aeroplane elevation. It might be the power of suggestion, but all 3 times I've had this whiskey now at the events, I so strongly get Toblerone. And I might just be equating Toblerone with duty frees because you can get those absolutely massive ones there. But maybe there's more to it than that. Yeah, it's got that waxy Swiss milk chocolate. And that lovely honey crisp thing that's... What the honey nougat, is it? That's inside a Toblerone, but it's like crunchy nougat. Is that what that is? Is that what's in a Toblerone? Nuts? No, there's nuts. It's definitely nuts. Oh. You know what this really reminds me of now, actually? One of my favourite distilleries, especially at a younger age, Glenglassaugh. I'm really feeling the Glenglassaugh style in this. That's lovely. That is truly beautiful. And it's... Actually, Kelly and Rob teased recently that they're sampling some single casks for the SMWS Canada's 15th anniversary, trying to pick a single cask for us. And they teased that it's from a distillery with a low number that they've never released in Canada before. I've never had an SMWS Glenglassaugh, but I believe it's in the 20s. I think that classes as a low number, so fingers crossed. I mean, I'm sure whatever they choose is going to be fantastic, but I have a special place in my heart for Glenglassaugh. So that would be nice. But this is not a Glenglassaugh. This is a distillery which, weirdly enough, has an extra special link to the duty frees that they talk about in the tasting notes, because this distillery is not the same name as the whiskey that they produce. The distillery doesn't own the rights to its own name for a whiskey brand. Another company does, which is really unfortunate for them. But the releases that they put it out under are Devron. It's just the Devron if you're in a normal place, like here. We just sold out, but we had the Devron 18, for example. But for some reason, in duty frees, it's usually called Glendevron. Why, as soon as you get past security, there's a Glen added to the name? I'm not entirely sure, but that's just the way they decided to brand it. It is Macduff Distillery in the Highlands. And Macduff's interesting because it has that sort of thicker, bolder flavour. And some people think that it might be maybe potentially a worm tub whiskey from the flavour profile. I'm not really getting this from this one, but it does often come up. But no, they don't have worm tub condensers. They've got shell and tubes. But rather oddly, they have their shell and tube condensers mounted horizontally instead of vertically, which is quite different to the norm. But the real big reason for that nuttier, weightier spirit is simply that they have an incredibly sharp angled line arm. So the bit at the top of the neck of the still that brings it back down to the condenser is really sharply angled, and that really affects the rate of reflux and gives a nutty, heavier flavour. Yeah, lovely whiskey. Like I said, probably the most surprising for me of the Outturn. Has definitely been and gone. It's sold out here at the Strath. Maybe you'll be able to find it at one of our partner stores. The price here at the Strath was $167.74, so that's approximately the kind of price you're going to be looking at it here in BC. Yeah, bloody good whiskey. Like, really, really impressive. Yeah, I like to be surprised. You might have noticed that I haven't added water to these verse 3 as well. And it's not that I forgot water. I actually have water today, and I can add a little bit if I want to. However, I did add water to these whiskies at the tastings, and for the vast majority of them, I thought that they kind of presented better without it. And again, that's a very personal opinion. But I also felt like water didn't change these ones much as well. There is one later on where water does change it, and we'll get to that. But before we get to that, it's time for the first of our 2 black labels this tasting. Next up, whiskey number 4 in this video is A Drift of Time. A stunning nose riddled with exotic flower nectars, heather honey, pineapple cubes, tutti frutti, whiskey-soaked banana bread, resinous hardwoods, and waxed burlap canvas. We revelled in a deep and beautiful impression of older-style aged malt whiskey. With reduction, we got rice pudding with cinnamon, flower honey, sultanas, caraway, and mineral oils. Increasing complexity and more medicinal qualities emerged over time as well. The palate was initially full of exotic fruits in various guises. Dried chunks, teas, smoothies, jams, oil infusions. We also found burlap and fat notes of wormwood and wintergreen. Reduction enhanced these beautiful waxy textural qualities, bringing notes of crystallized honey, pressed wildflowers, fruity tobaccos, and guava syrup. We found this one to be really stunning. Really stunning is somewhat of an understatement for this whiskey. This is a phenomenal dram. Truly, truly, truly phenomenal. All right. I'll give it a splash more. There we go. I was being a little stingy. All right. I've got to keep some in the bottle. I want to make sure all of our staff get a chance to try this one as well, because it's a particularly special bottling. This is Distillery 63. It's the 113th cask of Distillery 63. This was distilled on the 9th of May 2002. It was then placed into a first fill ex-bourbon barrel for 21 years, came out at 58.4, and 163 bottles came out of it. A beautiful 21-year Speyside whiskey with a Chinese back label. I mentioned that in one of the videos earlier this year. Some whiskey got bottled for China, and then China said, no. And so what their loss is our gain. I would have been very sad to have not got this whiskey after having now tried it. It's strange looking at these Chinese characters thinking, we very, very almost did not get this whiskey. It's very, very close to not coming to Canada. But get it we did. And I nicknamed this whiskey, and I sorry if I'm getting it wrong, but in my head at least I've got the right one of them. D'Artagnan, I think, was the 4th Musketeer. Is that right? Hit me up in the comments if I've got my Musketeers mixed up. But D'Artagnan, I believe. Because we actually had a trilogy of sister casks of this way back in 2023. And they were all 3 absolutely excellent epic whiskies, but they truly have saved the best till last. And matured it for a couple of years longer as well. It's so old school. This is the type of whiskey that if I was to sample this in like the grand tasting at a festival, or the consumer tasting as it's called at the Victoria Whisky Festival, if I got poured a glass of this, it would be kept under the table, and they'd see me and they'd pour me a little glass, and I'd come over and they'd tell me what it is. And as soon as it reached my nose, although the the room is incredibly loud and boisterous with hundreds of people talking over each other, it would all just fade away into the background, and all of my senses would just disappear and just concentrate on the aromas. It's just that damn beautiful. And it's not even the only whiskey in this lineup that I could describe that way. It's just kind of wild. Yeah, the burlap. Burlap is a weird thing, because again, it's not something you generally want to have in your mouth, but it does very much harken to a burlap sack. It feels like you've got an old potato sack, but it's filled with mangoes. Someone had made a big mistake at the grocery store and filled the potato sack with mangoes. Yeah. Old school cola candies. I'm getting that perfumey finish. And it just keeps going. But yeah, you know those old like hard cola cubes that taste like actual cola, not Coca-Cola. Yeah, fun fact. One of the reasons I prefer Pepsi Cola over Coca-Cola is it actually contains cola. Coca-Cola no longer contains cola, it's just cola flavored. Yeah, honey, sultanas. Caraway is an interesting one. I kind of, that caraway is such a strong flavor, I feel like I'm drawn to try and find it, but I'm not really getting in there. But yeah, dried pineapple chunks, pineapple tidbit, like dried pineapple, definitely. So those aforementioned sister casks to this, if you remember way back in 2023, we had a trilogy in January, April, and June of casks called Orange Creamsicle Crush, Oh Behave. Sorry, I got told off for just saying Oh Behave. Apparently I should do it like Austin Powers style. Oh Behave. Is that right? Did I do that right? Anyway, and the final one, Wickedly Vile and Despicably Dreadful, which had very comical tasting notes trying to tell you not to buy this whiskey so that the people writing the tasting notes could buy it instead, which was fun. Yeah, just bloody beautiful. It's a Glentockers, and it's an absolutely incredible Glentockers. A distillery that you don't really see very often. You kind of have to get through independent bottlers like the SMWS. Don't have an official bottling. Maybe they have some one-off anniversary releases or something in the UK, but there's never been one here. I've never seen an official bottling Glentockers. It was founded in 1898. One of my favourite years in the whiskey industry, because so many incredible distilleries were founded that year. And it's it has a great importance to those who are into architecture. I've mentioned Charles Doig several times, but I didn't realise he was responsible for more than one innovation in Scotch whisky. He's the guy who decided that pagoda roofs were a great idea, and they are, for fire suppression and like reducing the amount of smoke, and so many great reasons to have pagoda roofs in a distillery, and that's why you see them scattered across Speyside. But he also had another great idea, and the reason I have a problem with it is because it feels obvious. And it kind of feels weird that the Scots were making whiskey without doing this for several hundred years. But he termed it the gravity flow concept in distilleries. And that's simply the idea that each stage of the process is slightly downhill from the previous one when you're building the distillery, so that you don't have to spend time and energy and money pumping it from one section to the next. So, you know, you make a mash, and then you ferment in tanks, and then the first still, and then the holding tank, and then the second still, and then the bottling hall. So you just kind of run it down a hill. And it's one of those things that probably feels obvious in hindsight, but until the first person had that idea, no one had thought of it. It's just one of those random little innovations, like Gisbel in China, who had the idea, and I love them for it, of having casks that are wider at the bottom and narrow at the top. They have a wider base, so they don't fall over when you're on a pallet, so that they've got a sturdier base. Bloody brilliant. The fact that it took, 2,000 years at plus of barrel making to figure that that was probably a good idea. Kind of wild. Maybe it's more difficult. I don't know. I'm not a Cooper. I know a Cooper. I'll ask Cooper. Actually, I don't know a Cooper, but I know a Cooper's brother whose name is Cooper, which is very confusing. But yeah, Cooper Sleeman of Springmill, and they'll be at the festival as well. Fantastic Canadian whiskey. SMWS should bottle a Springmill. That should happen in the future, and probably, like, if we wait long enough, I'm sure it probably will. I've got big things are coming from Springmill, I believe. But yeah, Cooper Sleeman's brother, whose name I actually forget because I've not actually met the guy, unfortunately, is an actual Cooper. So I'll reach out to Cooper and find out if Coopers think that a wider base would be more difficult to make. Anyway, random tangent. This sold out. It's gone. Not only did this sell out, so I'll tell you the price. It was $289.48, which frankly is a great price for this whiskey. Like, weirdly good price for this whiskey. It went to the biggest draws I think I've ever seen. One of the days that we had the tasting, and our tastings vary between like 24 to 48 people at these events. We'll do a full tasting and sometimes 2 half tastings, and so we'll do 2 bottles worth of whiskey over 3 events. One of the tastings, only 3 people in the room didn't put their hand up to enter the draw to buy a bottle of this. I've never seen that before. That was wild. So yeah, definitely a style of whiskey that people are drawn to here right now. If there is any of this available at our partner stores, and I somewhat doubt there will be, but if there is, just do it. If you're a fan of this style of whiskey, just take my word for it. One of the best whiskeys I've had in the decade now that I've been presenting SMWS. Close to a decade. I don't want to move on to the next whiskey. Oh, but I do, because I've just remembered what the next whiskey is. God, there's a stunning line. All right, our next whiskey, for the first ever time in the SMWS Canada, and not only that, it's a 0.1. Our next whiskey is the Caped Cake Wrestler. And before I do the tasting notes, you can see the screen up here. I just want to run you through the history of one of my favourite wrestlers, Santa Claus. You can see here Santa Claus having his ankle broken by Kurt Angle. It was a sad day. Kurt Angle, Olympic gold medalist. He won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck. That's his catchphrase. He actually did, though, which is kind of wild. Very unfortunate for Santa. It set him back a little bit, but he did get his revenge. He managed to hire a bunch of doppelgangers, and a whole gang of Santas appeared and beat up Mick Foley, who, I don't think he had anything to do with the ankle incident, but it beat up Mick Foley in the boiler room by the look of it here. But the wrestlers got their revenge. Stone Cold Steve Austin managed to put on his finishing move, the Stone Cold Stunner, on a seated Santa Claus. And how you go from seated to this position, I don't quite understand. I think he must have been spring-loaded. But of course, bit of a setback for Santa. Poor Santa. He did return, though. And he is legitimately in the record books with WWE as a 24/7 champion, a championship that could be defended anytime, any place, even the North Pole. Santa legitimately apparently won the 24/7 championship, so kudos Santa, that's impressive stuff. Unfortunately, though, his career was cut incredibly short when the villainous Mexican wrestler Alberto Del Rio hit him with his car. Poor Santa. It's, maybe that's why he has a flying sleigh instead of an F-150. You know, he's just afraid of cars now, and I get it, man. I get it. It's as much as I personally wouldn't want to risk trying to land a reindeer-drawn sleigh on a snowy roof. Yeah, it's safer than the highway sometimes. It's risky out there. Anyway, this is the Cake Wrestler. Into the ring leaps prunes, raisins, and black cherries, enthusiastically sipping Armagnac in preparation for a face-off against the big ginger cake. Bouncing between ropes of licorice shoelaces and emboldened by a strong breakfast tea, they were ready to take on the world. After a splash of water, they dusted themselves with cocoa powder and fueled up with butterscotch and cinder toffee. From the crowd came wondrous aromas of rich sherries mingling with cured Spanish ham and tobacco. Finally, the bell, which was made of a hollowed-out honeydew melon, rang to signal the start of round 1. The prunes stepped forward, ready to meet the ginger cake and its teammates, juicy fruit chewing gum, and tutti frutti ice cream. Tagtastic. That is up there with one of my all-time favourite tasting notes from the SMWS. That is bloody brilliant. The Caped Cake Wrestler. I got so distracted. I still have the old whiskey in front of me. I should... okay, the magic of YouTube. Better. The Caped Cake Wrestler. This is a Highland whiskey. It was distilled on the 26th of April 2018 and aged for 6 years in a first fill STR barrique. And we'll get into STR in a second. It is 161.1, the first ever release of any SMWS branch of this whiskey. They managed to get 288 bottles and they came out at 58.3% alcohol. Blown away by this. So STR, here in Victoria, you're probably relatively familiar if you've ever done the tour of Macaloni Distillery down the road. Graham, master of marketing, he refers to STR as Swan's Toasted Reserve because Jim Swan, who I believe is one of the only people to have a double doctorate in whiskey. He had a doctorate in distillation and maturation. How and where, I'm not entirely sure. But he used STR casks as a way to help young distilleries get more additive maturation flavours into their whiskey in a short period of time. And it doesn't actually stand for Swan's Toasted Reserve. It stands for Shaved, Toasted and Recharred. More specifically, shaved, toasted and recharred, usually Spanish or Portuguese red wine casks. So they'll take away the heavily soaked wood so you're not getting too much wine flavour. They'll leave a little bit, but they'll reveal some nice fresh wood underneath. And that gives you a real good infusion of both wood and a little bit of wine flavour and helps mature the whiskey. Not quicker, because you're not speeding up time, but you're doing more in a shorter amount of time, right? That makes sense? STR casks can be used to surprisingly good results. All right. Yes. It's so complex for a 6-year-old whiskey. It has no business being this well-rounded. There's no chemically notes whatsoever. There's no acetone kind of notes. There's no heads and tails. It's just a really well done younger whiskey, and young whiskey can be excellently done. It's just you have to do it on purpose. You can't just release a whiskey that's meant to be aged for a long time at a young age and expect it to be good. You have to go into it from the get-go knowing that it's going to be released younger so that you can affect the distillation in a certain way. You can point it in the right direction. It's so deep. It's this beautiful... It feels like the effect of licorice, but it's not the flavour of licorice to me. It's got that darkness to it. It's got that sort of Maillard reaction, sugars caramelised, stuck to the bottom of the pan kind of a deepness. It's got this chestnuttiness to it as well. Bloody lovely whiskey. And this is the one that I thought changed quite dramatically with a touch of water. And I'm realising now I've got the water, but I forgot to get a pipette. So I'm just gonna be incredibly careful here. Oh dear. Might have overdone that. I might have to add a bit more whiskey. Oh no. All right. Yeah. I do not have a steady enough hand for that. Time to top it up. That's the best thing. If you ever add too much water, just add more whiskey back to it. It's a simple solution that people often miss. And a great excuse to have more whiskey. Oh, yeah. Spiced apples. That's it. I didn't get that until I added water last time, and it's the first thing I got when I got back to it again this time. Yeah, it's like the kind of spiced apple flavour you get in those instant oatmeal packages from Quaker. If you've had this spiced apple oatmeal from Quaker Oats, it's exactly that. Or like a hot apple cider, like American cider, not proper cider. Like the spiced apple juice that you have warm. Yes, that is delightful. All right, so let's talk about this distillery, shall we? 161, the first time ever having this distillery, not only in the SMWS, but my first time ever having anything from this distillery. We've never had anything from this distillery here at the Strath. I don't think anything from this distillery is launched in BC. It may have been available at one of the government's silly spirit release things in November at some point. But none have been made available to us. If it had been, I would have bought some because it's such a cool story. This is a first in so many ways. Not only our first time having it, but the distillery itself is just racking up an incredible list of industry firsts. Firstly, as far as we can tell, it's the first distillery named after a woman in Scotland. This distillery is named after the goddess of nature in Celtic mythology. However, I was trying to think, because I read that, and I was trying to think, surely there's something. I feel like we could maybe count Imperial. Obviously, it's not named after the woman themselves, but it's named in honor of Queen Victoria, I think. So maybe there's an argument to be said for Imperial being named in honor of a woman, but this is definitely the first one that actually has the name of, albeit fictional. I mean, sorry if you're a Celtic devotee. I'm sure there's some people that follow the religion still, so apologies if I'm being insensitive, but not a person you can go up and meet in this realm of existence, at least. But it is definitely the first distillery in Scotland to be 100% from the get-go fueled with renewable energy. It's the first to only use 100% recycled clear glass in every single one of their bottlings. And I believe, although they don't market this, I tried to research and I couldn't find any of the examples. I believe this is the first distillery founded by a woman as well, founded by Annabel Thomas in 2017. Has one of the longest fermentation times in the Scotch whisky industry, which explains how it gets so much complexity and flavour in such a young whisky as well. But probably most impressively, the very first bottle from this distillery that was ever bottled as a whisky. So their first ever line and the first bottle off that line was put to auction. And it sold for an eye-watering 41,004 British pounds. What's that? It's like $70,000. That is a strong start. And I know, I think there was probably a charity aspect to that, and I know there was a lot of, it's a lot of fun marketing hype to do stuff like that, but their whiskey really does speak volumes. I'm sorry to say this is very, very much sold out. This, again, went to a very fought after draw. Many names went in the hat to be able to have the rights to purchase this whiskey here at the Strath. You might find it elsewhere, maybe, possibly. When it was available, it was 208.61, long gone now. But if you feel a bit miffed, you feel missed out, well, hopefully next time you can join us for an Outturn in person, because that's where you get the best shot at getting the best whiskies. Actually, on that, our next Outturn dates are Sunday, the 4th of January, and Thursday, the 8th of January. No Outturn dinner, just the 2 tastings in January, because it's a busy month. Why is it a busy month? It's a busy month because Victoria Whisky Festival, of course, is happening, and the SMWS has not one, but 2 grand tastings on Thursday night with blues music. These guys are the Rhythm and Blues Project, and they are coming all the way from Scotland to present whiskey and play music at the same time, which I don't have the energy for that. Like, I play music and I present whiskey. I've never tried to do them both at the same time. That sounds like a lot of work. But these guys are professionals. They'll get it done. One of them, I believe, is actually a keeper of the Quake, which is very impressive. So, yeah, really looking forward to hosting them on the Thursday night of the festival. That's January 15th. And you can get tickets. I believe there's only one left for the 6:30 sitting, but there's a decent amount left for the 9:30 sitting. You can get tickets for that right now at strathliquor.com. Just click on the big banner at the top for Victoria Whisky Festival tickets. You can get individual tickets just for the Thursday night. But if you do want to come at 6:30, not all hope is lost, because we actually have little bundles as well, where you can get just the Thursday night tasting and the big celebratory consumer tasting on Saturday night as well, which is where, there's dozens of representatives from around the world who are sharing their whiskey with you, and you just walk around like a crazy market of whiskey where you don't have to pay for anything. You just got a glass and people just keep giving you whiskey until you say stop. So you can get a bundle of just the Thursday night and the grand consumer tasting together right now at strathliquor.com as well. So yeah. And on that, some of the whiskies that we missed because of the strikes are being released at the festival. So if you've seen some of the whiskies that we didn't get here in BC because of the strike, and you're looking longingly at the SMWS Canada website going, but where's mine? I want to try the black label that came out in October. Why didn't I get to try it? Well, the good news is you'll get to try some of those and some other beautiful whiskies at the Victoria Whisky Festival if you get tickets to Rhythm and Booze. All right. That's enough shilling for the festival. It's for charity. It's good. I can talk about it all day and feel guilt-free because it's all for charity. All right. Next up. Oh, I didn't even mention where this is. I said it's in the Highlands. Sorry, it's really cool. I've got so many notes on that page because there's so many interesting things to say about this distillery. I haven't even told you the name, have I? Bloody hell. It's Nicknean. Here's the slide. It's Nicknean. And Nicknean is in the town of Druin, which is very remote. As far as I can tell, the closest other town to it is actually Tobermory on the Isle of Mull, because Druin is right on the mainland, the Sound of Mull. So you could probably, on a good day, send up a smoke signal and see it over on Tobermory. Yeah. What a bloody cool whiskey. But it doesn't stop there. Next up, and we actually have one available of this next one to sell. I know I've said sold out many whiskies in a row now. But next whiskey is Browsing in a Christmas Shop. Yeah. The nose delivered heady aromas of Seville marmalade, candied orange slices dipped in dark chocolate, muscatel fruit loaf, and browsing in a Christmas shop. On the taste, we got fig rolls, Lebkuchen, a chocolate orange, and cherries and Coca-Cola syrup, with hints of tobacco later. The reduced nose had lots of dried fruit, brandy snaps, coffee creams, milk chocolate-coated caramel, and honey-drenched clove-flavoured pears. The palate now offered rich flavours of marzipan, molasses cake, lemon peel, and cassis, with ginger snaps, leather, and cigar butts to finish. And after 12 years in an ex-bourbon wood, we put this in a first-fill American oak Pedro Jimenez hogshead. Yeah, browsing in a Christmas shop. And that photo was the world's biggest Christmas shop, which is in Michigan, I believe. Yeah, very... very cool whiskey. It's Distillery 44.170. It is a Speyside single malt, aged for 16 years in that combination of first ex-bourbon, then first fill PX. It was distilled on the 23rd of October 2006. We got 175 bottles out of it at a cask strength of 62.5. And if you're thinking 62.5 is bloody high for a 16-year-old single malt, you'd be right, but this distillery is known for that. In fact, we ourselves bought a whole cask from this distillery quite recently, and it came out to almost exactly the same ABV at the same age, which is kind of wild. This is a fun one because it's so different to other things I've had from this distillery. It retains the meatiness of the spirit, and it does its wonderful little trick of turning tropical in older ages, but that bourbon PX hybrid maturation has really turned things on its head a little bit. Although I'm straight up getting pineapple on the nose, which is the thing that I normally get. So today, maybe it's a little bit more like a normal standard edition from this distillery. Yeah, that's weird. Didn't really get pineapple previously. What did stick with me, though, and I'm going to... especially on the palate, is the chocolate orange. Terry's chocolate orange. A Yorkshire icon. Yeah. You know Terry's chocolate orange started in York at Terry's factory? The dark chocolate version was the original. They only brought out the milk chocolate later on. So to me, the dark chocolate is the peak, and that's the flavour that I'm getting in here. I actually kind of prefer the milk chocolate, but I grew up with the dark chocolate, so that's the one that feels like the default to me. And it's a bit of a sad story because there's been a huge decline in quality in recent years of the Terry's chocolate orange. They moved production. They closed down the factory in York. It's now made in Poland, which, you know, nothing against Poland, but whenever you change the place that something's made so dramatically, other things change as well. So, different producers, different people making it, obviously, different recipe. And it's just not the same as what people remember. So I feel like the notes that I'm getting of the memory of a dark chocolate, Terry's Chocolate Orange, are more found in this whiskey than they are in the modern, I'm going to say it, bastardization of the Terry's Chocolate Orange that you can find in the stores now. Terry's Chocolate Orange used to be a boutique item, and it just got cheapened, and it just got commercialized, and it's sad. And I'm hoping that someone one day makes a good Terry's Chocolate Orange again. But in the meantime, I don't mind drinking this whiskey as a good substitute. So this is a sister cask, again, to whiskies that we had quite a while ago. Back in 2022, we had a pair of sister casks called Appealingly Crispy and Crunchy in July, and The Early Bird Gets the Worm, a reference to the worm tubs, which this distillery famously uses. In fact, many whiskies that emphasize worm tubs as a marketing thing, so the worm tub, for example, there's just a whiskey called that, is this whiskey, usually. In fact, when Boutique released this whiskey, they had a cartoon of a worm tub on the label. It's kind of known for it. And that's the form of, it's an old school style of condensing the vapors back into liquid. In the olden days, I believe the worm tub, it used to literally be a thin copper pipe that they'd take outside of the distillery into the creek, into the burn outside, to naturally cool it back down. But copper is really easy to saw through, and I feel like some shenanigans might have happened there. In the modern era, you wouldn't go outside with it. I'm sure it's probably one distillery that still does, maybe somewhere remote. But the more common thing is you just have it like in a bath of water. So it kind of looks like a big long copper worm, hence worm tub. Big tub of worms, but it's just a copper pipe. Yeah, lovely, lovely. Yeah, it's very mince pie to me. Chocolate oranges and mince pies. It really is very Christmassy. They hit the nail on the head with the reference in the name. I wonder if they were sampling it after bottling and being like, or before bottling and being like, it's good, but we're going to have to wait 7 months to release it because we can't release this in April, But yeah, very, very timely release for this whiskey. And like I said, we only have one bottle available, which is, speaks volumes to its quality. If you're quick on the draw, you might be able to get that bottle here at the Strath at strathliquor.com/SMWS or in store for $249.48. And if it is now sold out, again, please do go support our partner stores, Keg and Cork, Kensington Wine Market, and Legacy. That's beautiful. I love my job some days. Most days, frankly. It's very, very pleasant. The people, the whiskey, the room I get to do this in. Oh, I love it all. Next up, we have the second black label of this Outturn, or is it? Normally, we have a repeat at our tastings, but because we've got so many whiskies that we have in the cupboard now that we didn't manage to release because we didn't get them in time for the Outturns, we're dripping some of them out as our repeats, and seeing as I've never done a video on it before, I figured why not include it? So it's kind of a token part of the December Outturn. It's actually part of November's Outturn, but it felt like the perfect Christmas gift to include a second black label in the tasting for our members as a welcome back. So please join me in some barbecue Iberico Preta. And yeah, I know the slide that's up right now, it's the wrong kind of ham, but I was trying to find Christmassy slides and I could not find an actual Iberico ham with Christmas decorations around it. That's not a thing. And I was really trying hard not to use AI. So I didn't. I just threw a regular ham up and hopefully you don't care. All right. Wow, what a nose. We found ourselves barbecuing one of those famous cuts of meat called Iberico Preta, the best of the best from free-range Spanish pigs that live on acorns. On the palate, the succulent nuttiness combined with lavender smoke, heather honey, blowtorch mackerel with blini, and warm pickled beetroot to send our taste buds heavenward. with a drop of water, we were transported to a Middle Eastern fruit market where we enjoyed a traditional Berber tea made with cinnamon bark, cardamom, dry nutmeg flowers, spearmint, and star anise. Following 17 years in an ex-bourbon hogshead, we transferred this whiskey into a second fill Spanish oak Oloroso hogshead. Yeah. This is Distillery 3. Many of you will already know what that is. This is the 355th edition of Distillery 3, and it's a 20-year aged edition. It was distilled on the 16th of February 2004. Out of that Oloroso hogshead finishing cask came 240 bottles at a cask strength of 56.2, and of course this is an Islay malt. Lightly peated is the flavour profile. All right. I want to have a vacation inside this whiskey. It feels like I'm renting a cottage by the ocean with a wood fire, and I just got home from an early morning fishing trip where I caught mackerel that I'm now cooking for breakfast. Like, it feels like such an escape of a whiskey. I feel like I'm transported through space and time somewhere else. And again, everything falls away. I could be drinking this whiskey in a crowded room of screaming lunatics, and I could put it to my nose and just escape to that seaside cottage. Bloody hell. What a whiskey. Sold out, sorry. Don't get too excited. There's none of this. Again. Whoa, so many people put their hand up in the draw for this whiskey. Very, very popular. I'm just going to go ahead and say it. This is better than older official bottlings. This is possibly one of the best examples of a well-aged distillery number 3 that I've ever had. And it speaks volumes to the SMWS's expertise now, because they've been doing it for a while, in finding these casks and then finishing these casks and looking after them in their own maturation warehouse and keeping an eye on them and just bringing an extra level of excellence out of some of these whiskies. It is outstanding. It really is. The SMWS, I truly believe, is getting better and better and better every year, and it's lovely to be a part of that journey and to see that happen in real time. Oh, yeah. So it's distillery number 3. You probably already know that's Bowmore. If you didn't know that's Bowmore, yeah, this is a 20-year-old Bowmore. The oldest whiskey maturation site on the planet at the number 1 vaults. However, it is currently in a battle with Glenturret to find more evidence as to which one is older. Glenturret started off, I think there was 1775 they used to print on the labels, and then these guys, I think, found 1768, I believe, is what they found. And then Glenturret went back and found like 1763. I forget the exact dates. 1775 I'm familiar with because it, again, was on every bottle. But I think it's only a matter of time until Bowmore comes out and finds, well, we were distilling illegally before they were in 1752 or something. It's old. It's all. It doesn't really matter if it's the oldest. All you need to know is they've been doing this for a bloody long time, coming up to like 300 years. And yeah, they really, really know how to make a damn good whiskey of this style. About 25 ppm, Bowmore. And it tends to reduce quite dramatically with age. This one, however, even though it's 20 years old and it's been re-racked, which sort of gives maturation an extra boost when it gets put into another cask, it still retains that lovely maritime peat flavour. It's smokier than most old Bowmores I've had. And like I said, this is better than Bowmore 30, I think. And I shouldn't say that because I've got like 2 bottles of Bowmore 30 on the shelf that I need to move. And don't get me wrong, Bowmore 30, incredible whiskey. And as much as this is a nice looking bottle, the Bowmore 30 bottle is bonkers nice. I've got the box behind me here. Somewhere. Yeah, it's over here. It is a stunning presentation and a stunning whiskey. This is better. So take that into account. It's not really a surprise that even though this was $517.30, it went to a draw. Like, so many people wanted to buy this, and several left disappointed, unfortunately. But hopefully, maybe there's some available elsewhere. But don't be too sad, because this is almost definitely not the last we're going to see of a 20 or 20-plus-year-old Bowmore in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society. I'm sure they have more. In fact, this is our 3rd time having whiskey from this date. It's a sister cask, again, to some previous releases, including Finesse of a Fragrant Furnace from, I believe, earlier this year, Fruity Time Travel from July 2023, and a Welcome Home Hug from August of 2024. So maybe we'll even see a sister cask. And if it keeps getting better with age like this one did, maybe in 5 years' time we'll see a 25-year-old Bowmore that will just destroy everyone's concept of what great whiskey can be. Yeah, 517.30. Great. And our final whiskey of the year here at SMWS Canada. Please join me as we go gastronomic beachcombing. The nose evoked a beach barbecue, serving grilled pineapple, duck, venison, seared tuna on soy glaze. The palate's massive flavours included coal tar, ginger beer, smoked prunes, brine, and chimney scrapings. But also parmesan raisins, heather honey, panettone bread, and butter pudding. The reduced nose suggested dandelion and burdock, raisins macerated in birch tar liquor, eggplant fritters, and seaweed on lobster. The palate had crab and wakame salad with lemon thyme dressing, then black pepper and eucalyptus to finish. At 9 years of age, we combined 2 ex-bourbon hogsheads from the same distillery into a first-fill European oak, Pedro Jimenez Butt, for further maturation. Yeah. This is a fun one. So this is Distillery 53. This is the 491st of Distillery 53, so a popular one. 473 bottles came out of that final XPX oak butt. So it's funny because theoretically, it's a single cask whiskey. All the whiskey came out of one cask, but because that cask was filled with 2 smaller casks, you can't call it a single cask whiskey, even though it's from a single cask. It's from Islay. It was distilled the day before my birthday, March the 5th, 2012. The initial cask of ex-bourbon hogsheads, of course, it was aged for 12 years total, which is the year that the distillery decided is the ideal maturation time for this. This is the same age as the official bottling, so flagship from this distillery. And it could not be more different, frankly. Yeah. All right. Let's finish the year off with a bang with this lovely little SMWS. Look at the colour of that. That PX is coming out strong, isn't it? And I find what they did to be a little odd. Don't get me wrong. The idea of putting smaller casks into a butt makes sense, because butts are big. And I cannot lie. I have to say that every time. Sorry. My dad jokes. It's a reflex at this point. Yeah, butts are a very large vessel for containing whiskey, previously sherry. They're about 600 litres. But it's weird to me that they went the route of putting 2 hogsheads into a butt. Because you'd normally get like 620, 630 bottles out of a butt, and they only got 473, which means they only filled that butt 2/3 of the way full, or probably 3/4. Not enough room in there to fit another hogshead. But, as famously done by Blackadder in their Black Snake series, you can fit 3 barrels in a butt relatively easily. So why? Maybe they just didn't have any barrels from this distillery to do that with, but it makes far more sense to me to put 3 barrels of whiskey in a butt rather than 2 hogsheads and then leave the butt a quarter empty. But who am I? I'm just a guy enjoying it on the other end. I'm not part of the process of making it. I'll leave that to the experts. I'm sure they had reasoning. Maybe leaving a quarter of the cask empty made it mature in a different way. I'm not really sure what the effect of only part filling a cask would be on maturation. I mean, less wood contact theoretically, but more oxidation? Yeah, it's interesting. Maybe they were experimenting. They do like to experiment at the SMWS. 2 great results, I should add. Especially with this one, that is... The quintessential bacon wrap scallop note, which I've grown to know and love from this distillery, which is, of course, the biggest distillery on Islay, the most commonly bottled whiskey in all of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society releases here in Canada. It's a Kalila. And like I said, very different to the Kalila 12. The Kalila 12 is low ABV, chill filtered, probably coloured. Lovely whiskey, great value. This is at least 3 times as good and way less than 3 times the price. Man, that sherry cask really works with the Kalila style. And it's funny because it's known, but not really... They don't really do anything about it as official bottlings. Diageo doesn't seem to try and, like, do that. As far as I'm aware, we only get the Kalila 12 here. We don't get anything else. I know there's like the Kalila Moch or something in the UK. I can't remember what the makeup of that is. But the fact that, like, Ardbeg Ugadal is so popular, the fact that Kalila could do something quite similar and just doesn't, is weird to me. It feels like they're just leaving money on the table. But thankfully, independent bottlers like the SMWS are more than happy to step up and step in, and that's kind of what we've got here. Big, sweet, smoky gorgeousness. I do get dandelion and burdock, and that's such a distinctly British thing. I think some import stores get it here, but it's like British root beer. Essentially. It's a bit of a different flavour, a little sweeter. I'd say almost slightly curranty in flavour as well. There's a bit more fruitiness to a dandelion and burdock than there is a root beer. But it's essentially British root beer. But yeah, I definitely get that. It's definitely D&B. Bars D&B specifically. This would be, as much as we've had the quintessentials. So, Christmas whiskey here. We had browsing in a Christmas shop earlier. Again, 1 bottle of this left. Get it while you can. We had browsing in a Christmas shop. This, to me, feels very much New Year's. Because my family's tradition on New Year's Day was to go for a hike. And we would hike through the Peak District in Derbyshire. And you knew when the hike was coming to a close when you got close to the pub and you could smell its wood fire. Because we'd always start and finish at a pub. We'd park in the car park, we'd go for a big loop, come back to the pub, have a beer, maybe a bite to eat. If I was a little older, I'd probably be having a whiskey, but this feels very hiking on New Year's Day to me. It feels celebratory and it feels rustic. But it also feels like me right now, not, 17-year-old going for a hike with my parents, me, would probably think about putting something like this in a hip flask if I were to do that again. I think that would be a great hip flask whiskey. Not that I condone drinking in public, but, people enjoy whiskey from a hip flask, whether it be at home or elsewhere. Oh, lovely. And at time of recording again, we have 1 bottle left of this that we are releasing at 10 o'clock on Friday morning, the first Friday of December 2025. So if you're getting this video as it launches, there might be 1 more bottle available at the Strath. If not, again, we have partners, we have friends who are more than happy to help as well. Kensington Wine Market over in Calgary, Keg and Cork in Edmonton, and of course, Legacy just across the water there in Vancouver. Yeah. We love working with our partners. We love working with the SMWS. It has been an absolutely outstanding year for the Society here in Canada, and I look forward to seeing what Kelly and Rob have for store in 2026. And again, tickets available right now for the Rimmerman Booze Project, SMWS Music and Malt Tastings at the Victoria Whisky Festival in January. The exact date of that, I forget. It is a 15th, Thursday the 15th, and there's 2 seatings at 6:30 and 9:30. Be there. And if you're in Vancouver, I understand there's also an event happening in Vancouver as well. Go to smws.ca for details on that. That has been one hell of an outturn. These have been your whiskies, and I have been Adam Bradshaw, and I will see you in the new year. Slancher, stay well.
Find your way home. Your